What's up, YouTube friends? My name is Danny Jones, and welcome to Jones Vibes.
Jones Vibes.
First and foremost, thank you so much for clicking on this video, and if you enjoy it, please go ahead and click that Spidey button, like button, and then go ahead and click subscribe as well as hit that notification bell. That'll keep you up to date when I make more content. Now, if you watched my last video, it was a non-spoiler review right out of the theater of No Way Home for the first time, and now I've actually seen this movie twice, and so I'm here to talk spoilers. I want to break this thing down, and it honestly still just feels surreal, like Spider-Man No Way Home is here, like I've seen it. But before I really dive into this, I do gotta let you know again, this is a spoiler review. If you haven't seen Spider-Man No Way Home, stop the video right now. And if you have, like me, let's get our spidey senses tingling and let's break this thing down. So off the top, this movie was directed by Jon Watts. We're all pretty familiar with this guy now. He did Homecoming, he did Far From Home. But just to talk about him for a moment, before the MCU, he really hadn't done much. I found out today that he's done a Death Cab for Cutie music video, so that's tight. But honestly, Homecoming and Far From Home are really good movies. They're really great. They just have a different feel because they're attached to the MCU. But really, I never could have envisioned Jon Watts making something this good. Like, those other two movies are dope, don't get me wrong, but this was insane. Somehow, him and Kevin Feige and everybody in the background brought all of this stuff together. For anybody out there that complains about comic book movies, like, this is huge.
You're going nowhere.
You can't walk out of the theater and say this was a bad movie. You just can't. Because on the other side of things, we have Michael Giacchino composing this whole thing. And man, the score was so good. This movie in particular really brought me back to those moments with Danny Elfman and Sam Raimi kind of working together. And Giacchino's just killing it right now. I think he has the new Jurassic Park coming up. He's doing the Batman. Like, this guy is just on top of his game. He's like the next John Williams, it kind of feels like. But then we have like the famous trio now. We have Jacob Batalon, we have Zendaya, we have Tom Holland. They're all like movie stars now. When all this first started off, like, they were super young and just kind of like playing the high school students. And now they're branching out to other films and they're just killing it in Hollywood. And we pick up right after Far From Home ends, which I love. And the way that they do this is just so intense. Like, his face is literally plastered all over New York City. Like, everybody knows who he is. J. Jonah Jameson is back, and he actually has like a full-on active role. He's kind of just narrating this whole thing. It's just so classic. But the beginning of this film, it moves really fast. Like, there's a lot to digest right away. You have May and Happy, and they're like kind of breaking up. And then pretty quickly, they're all arrested by the Department of Damage Control. And obviously, Peter needs a lawyer, and then all of a sudden, Daredevil steps in, Charlie Cox. He is in the MCU. And these shows are funny because they were never like associated with the MCU. They were on Netflix. I think a lot of them actually just ended up getting canceled. I always loved the Daredevil show as well as the Punisher. To me, Jon Bernthal is just like, he is the Punisher. And so I really hope that we see him in the future. Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin, which is now in Hawkeye. But yeah, Charlie Cox, or should I say Matt Murdock, the lawyer, he's in this for a scene. He catches a brick out of nowhere, and Peter's like, how in the world did you do that? And he's like, I'm a really good lawyer. But yeah, then he starts his senior year, and it's really crazy. Like, there's all these people that are defending Mysterio, and there's also the other side of the people that just love Spider-Man and Peter Parker and support him. And so he's just the most famous person in the world. And it really starts getting to him. I mean, they're all applying to colleges like Ned, MJ, and Peter. They all want to go to MIT, but then all of their applications were rejected just because they're associated with Spider-Man. Just like all my applications were rejected, but not because I knew Spider-Man. But when this happens, Peter is like, gosh, I'm like ruining everybody's life. Like, what am I gonna do? And just like we all knew was gonna happen from the trailers, he seeks out Doctor Strange. We see Wong for a second. He's the new Sorcerer Supreme because of technicality, I guess. Doctor Strange was gone for 5 years. But Peter just asked Doctor Strange if there's a way that everybody can forget that Peter Parker is Spider-Man. And then Doctor Strange is like, that's not possible because I don't have the time stone. But then he's like, actually it is possible because I am a wizard.
I'm a what?
And things get pretty hairy from here. They start doing the spell. Peter keeps interjecting and being like, no, I want Danny from Jones Vibes to remember me. And so then the spell gets botched, but it didn't happen quite in the way that I thought it was gonna. I thought things were gonna go crazy from here, but he actually ends up containing the spell. And so that kind of confused me. I was like, oh, okay. So maybe they're not coming through yet. But it turns out, because this was kind of botched, everybody that knows Peter Parker or Spider-Man from other universes start coming in. And so this is really when it gets good. Basically, Peter is trying to track down this lady from MIT and convince her to accept the applications and get his friends into college. And then all of a sudden, we have Dr. Otto Octavius, we have Alfred Molina from Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 2 in the same universe as Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man. And they have an awesome fight on the bridge. Like, it's well choreographed, the CGI is fantastic, the special effects. But in the midst of all this, Peter's nanotechnology from his suit ends up fusing to Doc Ock's arms. And so Peter basically just like pairs his Bluetooth to it. Just like super easy, and then all of a sudden he can control Doc Ock's arms. And then a pumpkin bomb drops on the bridge, and so everybody starts losing their mind in the theaters. And we see the classic suit of Green Goblin, Willem Dafoe. We hear the laugh, and just when you think they're gonna fight or something crazy is gonna happen, Doctor Strange transports both of them back to the Sanctum Sanctorum, where he traps Doc Ock, and he also has already trapped the Lizard. And so then all the villains just start coming in. We get introduced to Jamie Foxx's Electro. He has a different look that honestly is way better. And I will say, Jamie Foxx's performance in this whole movie was amazing. He had some hilarious lines, and there's even a hint of that like guitar theme that was in Amazing Spider-Man 2. And we're also introduced to Thomas Hayden Church as Sandman, who is back in this movie kind of in the same way as the Lizard. Like, he's not really there the whole movie until the end and you actually see him in person. But yeah, Peter pretty much traps all of these villains, and it's slowly revealed to Peter that all of these villains die in their realities. We all know this. I mean, everybody but Sandman and Lizard died in the movies, at least, but I think it's safe to say that they both return to like their life of crime, and I think Spider-Man ends up killing them, or that's at least what we're led to believe. But I'm not sure on that. But yeah, we have this awesome shot of Green Goblin taking off his mask and leaving it in the alley, just like that scene from Spider-Man 2 when Peter leaves his suit behind. And he goes to a local homeless shelter called Feast, and this is where Aunt May works. But this is the first time that we see Norman Osborn and Willem Dafoe. And I gotta say, he looks great. I think he's like 66 years old, but somehow they made him look like a younger version of himself. But he's acting all like chill and like kind of playing the victim. I don't know. I was like, don't trust this guy. There's something sinister going on. And there really is. Like, I have to say, this Green Goblin, this performance by Willem Dafoe is up there with the best villain performances of all time. Like, he was great in the original Spider-Man, but you almost feel like everything that he wanted to do in that movie, he got to do in this movie. Like, I've seen an interview where he wanted to do all of his own stunts in No Way Home. That was like one of the conditions. And he did. Like, there's a fight scene coming up where Peter is punching him in the face and he's just laughing at him. It was so eerily reminiscent of Heath Ledger's Joker, but I have to say, this was such a fantastic performance by him. But they bring him back to Doctor Strange, and this is when Peter and Doctor Strange have like their big battle. Doctor Strange wants to just return them all to their universe and send them back, which with the gravity of the situation is probably the smart thing to do immediately. But Peter can't swallow that these people are going to go back and die, and he sees the good in people. MJ even says that. She's like, because that's not him. Like, this kid has a heart. And so Peter steals the box that's going to send them all back, and him and Doctor Strange have this crazy fight in the mirror dimension. And if you don't really remember what was happening here, I'll lay it out for you. Peter did all this web slinging stuff and like slung Doctor Strange up. But yeah, Spider-Man wins, and so he takes all the villains, and I really liked this. It was kind of like Bill and Ted. It reminded me a little bit of this. He has all these super villains, and he's like walking them into this apartment, and his goal is basically just to like fix all of them. He's going to make a cure so they can go back to their reality and be normal and not die. And he does end up replacing the chip on Doc Ock, and so Doc Ock is kind of like healed. But Norman Osborn craves power, and things get really crazy right here. There's this scene where Peter's Spidey sense goes off and everything slows down and the music gets super ominous, and he realizes that there is a darkness inside of Norman Osborn and that things are about to get really bad. And then we go off into this fight scene. Electro doesn't want to be healed either, so he runs off. Everybody kind of scatters, and you have this fight scene between Green Goblin and Spider-Man that is so good. This is the scene that I was talking about with Willem Dafoe. Like, he is so brutally tough. He's like breaking Peter through floors, and the choreography and the fighting is just so good. And they end up crashing through all the floors, and May ends up getting in the middle of it. The glider nails her, and she falls to the ground. So right then and there, I was like, oh no, is May okay? And then she gets up and kind of acts like she's okay. And things start to get really emotional here. She gives a really well-acted speech to Peter, and she says, with great power comes great responsibility. And basically just says, like, you have this superpower. Like, no, you are special. And just when they're about to leave, she collapses. And so now we get the Tom Holland emotion that I think a lot of us have been wanting. This is one of those emotional scenes that, like, we've seen with Tobey, we've definitely seen with Andrew Garfield, and Tom Holland has his moment with May dying in his arms, and oh my gosh. Tom Holland is just such a good actor, like killing it. You have this shot after that in the rain, it's just pouring rain on him, a side shot of his face, and J. Jonah Jameson basically saying that Spider-Man is a menace. Peter Parker is responsible for all of this, and everything that Peter Parker touches ends with chaos. And so somehow in this multiverse movie with all these villains, we get to the root of what Spider-Man is. And Tom Holland's Peter Parker is slowly finding out that being Spider-Man is a really lonely thing. And it's just heartbreaking. But then this is what John Watts does so well. You have this crazy emotion, and then you cut to Ned and MJ at Ned's Nana's house. And this is when our theater just went crazy because the theories have been there. Like, everybody kind of knew that Tobey and Andrew are in this film. Like, I knew it. I knew they weren't gonna just like not have them show up. They couldn't, and the expectations were so high, but somehow all of this laid under wraps. Like, they got away with it. Like, there were some spoilers that came out, but Andrew Garfield just kept denying and denying. It seems like nobody ever was even asking Tobey. But Ned has kind of discovered that he has some magic powers. Doctor Strange kind of shuts him down earlier in the film when he's talking about it. But he did say that it runs in his family. And so he's asking Doctor Strange's ring that he has to show him where Peter Parker is. And you get this shot in an alley and you clearly see that it's Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man. And he starts coming towards, and like, our theater was just going nuts. And the thing to understand is that Andrew Garfield is like so much more than just a good actor these days. Like, he is a flat out movie star. He's gonna be an Oscar winner. The emotion that somehow he can just pull in his face is wild. But then we turn around and they look for Peter Parker again, and Tobey steps through. Like, Tobey Maguire is back. And they were both emotional for me. I just didn't really even know what to feel. Like, Tobey is the Spider-Man that I grew up with. Like, he honestly just means a lot to me. He had a huge impact on my childhood. And the way that him and Andrew Garfield act together in this film just really came together. Like, they seem very cohesive. And then in the next scene, we bring in Tom Holland, and they all three work so well together. They end up saying that they're sorry about May, and then they go on to like their own kind of emotional little speech. Like, Tobey talks about Uncle Ben and when he died and how he then took out his rage on somebody and murdered the man that did it, but it wasn't worth it. And Andrew Garfield talks about how he's kind of stopped pulling his punches, and he also talks about the death of Gwen. And that stuff really tears me up because the scene in Amazing Spider-Man 2, say what you want about that movie, but that scene is so emotional, and it's purely just because of those two actors. But then they move on to try to like fix the contraptions that are going to heal the villains, and they come up with this big plan. There is some really good dialogue and banter. I wish I could just go through all of it. Like, Ned scoots over to Tobey and is like, "Did you have a best friend?" And Tobey's like, "Yeah, he died in my arms after he tried to kill me. It was awful." And like, just those funny little lines are hilarious. But after this, we move into like the big final set piece, and it's at the Statue of Liberty. Peter Parker calls into J. Jonah Jameson's Daily Bugle and talks to everybody, kind of just like FaceTimes everybody, basically telling the villains where they are and where to find them, as well as just to wish him luck on this crazy fight. And because May died, like, there's a lot of weight to the situation. Peter truly wants to kill the Green Goblin. And this is where Tobey steps in again as the Elder, and he's like, "No, we're gonna cure him. It's not worth it just to kill." And as for this crazy final fight, like, it just doesn't really get much better. All the villains are insane. Ned and MJ open up a portal so they can't really like leave, and it leads all the way to MJ falling, and that scene from the trailer where you don't know if Tom Holland's gonna catch her or not. And then Tom Holland gets hit out of the way by Green Goblin's glider, and I was like, okay, yeah, they're gonna do it. And Andrew swoops in and saves her, and there's this super sweet moment where he's looking at her and he's like, "Are you okay?" And he has tears in his eyes, and it kind of fleshes out this moment, and then she's like, "Are you okay?" And he's like, "Yeah, I am."
Oh, somebody kill me, please!
I might have to retitle this video, Spider-Man No Way Home, Why Andrew Garfield is the Best Ever. And there's also a couple shots of them all three swinging together, all three Spider-Man. Like, the nostalgia and the emotion was just off the charts. They all three work so well together. But they end up healing all the villains, and this is when you see Thomas Hayden Church, and you see Kirk Connors kind of like in the flesh. And I actually haven't looked into this. My theory is that they just ended up pulling footage, maybe, from like Sony or from like the original movies, because they couldn't get the actors. Or Or maybe the actors came back, I don't know, but it was interesting that those two weren't really around for the whole movie. Just the end, and they both didn't say anything. But they heal everybody except for Green Goblin, and Green Goblin shows up, and there's this huge final fight that, just like the first fight between them, is so brutal. And Tom Holland loses control. Absolutely loses control, and he's just wailing on Green Goblin. It kind of felt like a UFC fight or something. I was like, oh! And then he picks up the glider, and he's like, gonna kill him. And Toby steps in and is like, no, bro, don't do this. And they kind of do the fake out of Toby dying. Toby gets stabbed, and everybody in the theater was like, but then it ends up kind of just being like a little joke. He's like, relax, I've been stabbed before. I'm fine. But that kind of ends that whole fight. Like, they end up healing Osborn, and he's kind of just like, what did I do? And even without that darkness to him, now he's just kind of hollow and empty. And it's interesting watching him fade away when everybody fades away, because he's just kind of like sad. But we've seen Peter Parker in this film go through so much. And even in the arc of all of the MCU movies. Like, he's been to space, he's been an Avenger, he's gone to high school. And his story arc is really cool, but he finally has realized like what it is to be Spider-Man. And also the consequences behind it. And so thematically, I feel like they really did it. They did it with Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And now this is the point where like the multiverse has now been open. The sky is like all cracked. And you kind of see some other villains starting to come through. Like, you can kind of make out like a Scorpion and a Rhino. But Peter realizes like the only way to come back from this is if everybody actually forgets who Peter Parker is. They have to forget that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. They have to forget that Peter Parker even exists. And it really is like everyone, like even Doctor Strange is going to forget him. And so they have a pretty touching moment where he's kind of like, see you later, kid, you know? I'm sure that was pretty heartbreaking for him because he knows he's just going to forget him. And then you have the blockbuster moment where Peter goes, he goes and says goodbye to Toby and Andrew, and that was special, and you kind of see their little send-off. But then he has this moment with Ned and with MJ, and the sun is now kind of rising, and so the lighting and the cinematography was so good. The score is just booming. But this is where I really loved Zendaya. Her acting in this scene really nailed it. There's a reason why she's in so much stuff right now. She was fantastic in Dune, but her just being like, no, I don't want you to forget me. Like, I'm trying to grip the situation and come to terms with it. And when she does, they have this final kiss. And like I said, the score is just blaring. And then he kind of starts walking off into the sunrise, I guess. And he turns around, and there's this moment of Tom Holland's Spider-Man that just like cemented this trilogy. He looks back at them one last time, and then he goes off. And he said that he was going to try to like bring their memory back. He goes into the diner, and like the emotion keeps coming. He sees them, they don't even know him. They've both now gotten into MIT. And then there's this scene between the two of them at the cash register where he just has tears in his eyes, kind of, but he's trying to play it cool. And I think he realizes that it's better if they don't know. And he moves into this little shady apartment in New York. There's a landlord, and it's not the rent guy, so that sucks. But he moves into this apartment, and he makes a new suit, which I thought looked amazing. And it's the perfect way to like send him off maybe into his own trilogy or start his story fresh. It seems like he's out of like the Avengers and all that stuff now, which I love, and there's just like so much potential. Like maybe Harry will come into the mix. Harry Osborn, not Harry Potter. And I'm just really excited about the direction. But final thoughts before I get into the post-credit stuff. I truly think that the last hour of this film, hour to 45 minutes, is the best comic book movie of all time. I'm not really one to like rank the Spider-Man movies, and I've already seen people that are like, this is better than any of the Sam Raimi movies and stuff. I kind of like just letting them all be. But when it comes to the MCU and like ranking all that stuff, like, I don't know. The main point is this is one of the best films of all time. But it's a very interesting film. Like, it plays on nostalgia, and it just has so many different elements coming from the past, coming from the MCU, that it almost just doesn't even feel fair. So I'm probably just going to keep it out of the conversation of like, is it better than this or better than that? Because honestly, this movie has jumped up to just like, it's one of my favorites of all time. It was so good. It was so good. One of the best theater going experiences I've ever had. And I want to go again as many times as I possibly can. But anyway, yeah, we do have a couple post-credit things to talk about. The first being Tom Hardy's Venom, Eddie Brock. They're sitting at this bar. The bartender is that guy from Ted Lasso. And it's a funny little scene. scene. Like, he's so amazed that, like, there's this purple guy from space. He's like an alien, and he has these stones, and there's like a big green Hulk, but they actually get zapped back to their universe. And I'm not really sure how all of this works. I'm gonna have to look into it. But when they leave, Venom, a little piece of Venom is left behind on the bar. And so maybe we see a different iteration of Venom in Tom Holland's Spider-Man. Maybe we do end up somehow seeing Tom Hardy and Eddie Brock in it. I don't know. I don't really know what's going to happen with all that. I'd imagine that the scoopers are going to scoop when it comes to fan theories with that. And then the second, not even post-credit scene, it was just a trailer. It was the trailer for the Multiverse of Madness, and oh my gosh, that looks amazing. And it's hard for me to even understand, like, what's happening in this movie. I'd imagine as the months go on, we'll learn more about the main plot of it, but it just looks crazy. But anyway, yeah, that wraps it up. I'm actually kind of sad to not be talking about No Way Home. Like I said, this is a movie that all of us have been waiting a long time for, and it delivered in a huge way. And I know the consensus is that people are really liking this film, but I want to hear what you thought about it. Did you love it as much as I did? Did you not like it? What was your favorite part of this movie? Like, there's so many things to process in this film, so please let me know down in the comments. Also, hit that like button if you could. That'll help me expand on YouTube, and it would mean the world. But that's it. That's Spider-Man No Way Home. And so I hope all of you are safe, happy, and healthy out there, and I will see you next time.